everybody, welcome. It's Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. Hope you all having a great one. We certainly are. Thank you for joining us here at Alien Girl Holsters. It's Calling the Shots. Check it out. I got my buddy. It's Andrew Branca. He's here. You know what we do this time of week. We call the shots, and you're going to be the experts this week because I think y'all got it figured out by now. I think you know what's going on. Maybe. We're going to find out. Here's the deal. Hello, Andrew. Thank you for being here, first of all.
My pleasure, Nate. Happy to be back anytime.
So it's Wednesday. It's Calling the Shots. It's time to fire away. All right, for those of you that are joining us live here on Facebook, thank you. That's the Alien Gear family that we've grown to love, and you show up each and every week, so thank you for that. If you're watching us later, not live on YouTube, thank you for joining us as well. If you have questions, email cts@lawofselfdefense.com, and we will hopefully cover some of those questions maybe at the end of this show or in a previous show. Again, we are here. We're talking about the law of self-defense. You carry a gun, you go out into public, you use that, or you carry that to protect yourself and your family. And everybody always wonders, what is it? Where am I protected by the law? When I'm protecting myself and my family. So that's some of the things we're going to discuss today with Andrew. And for those of you that don't know, you can go on over to lawofselfdefense.com/CTS right now and sign up for a raffle to win something there, as well as I think we might have a previous winner. Andrew, do we have a previous winner?
Previous winner for our defensive property course, normally a $100 course, and that winner from the last week is Salvatore Skiaska from Georgia. So Salvatore will be contacting you by email to get you that defensive property course.
All right, congratulations. All right, we've got some videos. This is how it works. We're going to show some videos. Andrew's going to give you a little breakdown of these videos. We want you to figure out, is it a good shot, bad shot? When can you shoot? Are these people making good decisions, bad decisions? What would you do in these scenarios? And we want to hear from you. Put your comments right here in comments. I might give something away to people in comments, but also when you do comment the question. If we don't get to it, we're going to try to get to it at the end of the show. But if we don't, then we'll go back through and maybe cover it next week and some of the questions next week. So good to have you all here. Thank you. And how do you want to start this, Andrew?
First, I'm seeing a couple comments here that people are having trouble hearing me. Is that better? Can you guys hear me okay?
I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Okay, very good.
Is it still hard to hear? Was it his audio levels, Riley?
It was a little weird there for a minute, but I think we got him back.
Okay, I think it is solved. That problem is solved.
So a couple things I'd like to mention up front. First of all, as always, folks, please share this program. Share it. Click that share button. That's the most important thing that Facebook cares about. We don't pay to promote these shows, so it all depends on being organic. Which means we rely on you folks to hit that share button. Like, comment, of course, helps as well, but the share button is the big one. We also have, our book, The Law of Self-Defense.
If you share this video, one of you is going to win a book.
And it's autographed, hardcover. That's the expensive version, folks. So that's what you want. That looks great on the bookshelf, even if you don't read it. But of course, I do encourage you to actually read it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to mention is we have something new at Law of Self-Defense, and that is those of you who listen to these shows know that I'm constantly talking about these 5 elements of a claim of self-defense: innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. And if you're new and if you've never heard those before, or you don't understand what they mean or why they're important, it's very difficult to get the most value out of this program that you possibly could. And we don't want to take the time to explain it over and over and over again. So what we've done at Law of Self-Defense is we've put together this nice infographic that explains the 5 elements of self-defense, gives a little definition of each. We're making it available totally free, folks. Doesn't cost anything to get this. You ought to download it, have it accessible, have it on your desk. In fact, you could open up a separate tab right now and get it at the normal URL that we share with you folks, lawofselfdefense.com/CTS for calling the shots. Just download that document and you'll have the 5 elements in front of you. So it'll be much
Brilliant.
easier for you to get the maximum value out of our legal analysis of these videos.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. I get asked the question over and over, and I actually sometimes forget. And like, what are the 5 elements? And so that is brilliant idea. Thank you for doing that. Make sure you download yours today.
Somebody also asked us about the mugs. We've been talking about the mugs a while because we had gotten a bunch from China and sent them back. We have the American mugs, folks. This is the American mug. We got a whole bunch of them. They're in the warehouse. Unfortunately, we don't have the sales page up for them yet. Hopefully, we'll have that up within the next day or two, at which point we'll email everybody who's on our email list and let them know the mugs are available. If you get this, you'll be on our email list, folks. So you'll be among the first to be able to get our beautiful, and they are gorgeous, Law of Self-Defense mugs.
Like that.
Law of Self-Defense on the front and on the back. Oops, see if I can figure this out. Hard to kill, hard to convict.
There you go. Man, that was a really nice mug, Andrew.
I like yours too.
I might need one. I might need one of those. I'm just saying.
You're on the list. You're getting one.
All right. I'm on the not so naughty list from Andrew Branca, so I'm gonna get one of those maybe. I'll be drinking out of it every time we do the show. I can tell you that. Maybe we'll give one away in a raffle once too.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
All right, well, let's talk about law of self-defense. How about that? We've got some videos for you guys to check out, and I guess I'm not really sure. I know we mixed these up a little bit, and I'm not really sure which ones we're going with, but are we going with the Idaho Falls one first? Is that the one we're going with? Let's do that one. And Andrew, do you want to give us a little breakdown of what's going on here? This is in a convenience store.
Sure. Again, this is yet another convenience store robbery. This one captured on surveillance video of exceptional quality. So,
oh yeah,
these keep getting better and better. This is like 4K stuff. And a clerk's behind the counter, woman's behind the counter. Guy comes in, a robber. It's a little longer than our normal videos. It's a couple minutes long. Bad guy comes in here, ding dong. There's the clerk. He walks up. Hey, how you doing? And he takes out a gun. He wants everything. There's the gun right there. The clerk's completely compliant. She's actually panicked, obviously, but doing the best to be compliant. He wants the cash. And of course, he's increasing the pressure on her. He keeps doing this I'm counting to 5 thing and starts counting. 5's his lucky number, he'll say. He threatens to, if he has to come across the counter, he's going to put a hole in her, all this kind of armed robbery stuff. Now, of course, he's got his gun out there. Compliance is almost certainly the smart choice here. It's very difficult to draw against a draw gun. And in any case, this particular clerk's not mentally or physically prepared to do that. So she's just giving him the money, doing everything he wants. But of course, her life is in his hands. It's not up to her whether or not she lives to the end of her shift. It's up to him to make that decision. So she's doing everything she can to try to make that decision as easy for him as possible. She can barely even open the register, which is something I'm sure she does 10,000 times a day, but under pressure. And this is how pressure affects us, folks. Pressure reduces our physical and cognitive abilities tremendously. He's threatening her with the counting again. He wants more of the money. Still got his gun in the hand there, wearing a mask. By the way, folks, if any lawful concealed carrier was behind him, could they simply shoot him in the back of the head?
That's the question.
That's calling the shot, right? So you have to look at those 5 elements we talked about: innocence, eminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. If they're all checked off, then shooting him in the back of the head would be a lawful use of defensive force, certainly in defense of the clerk and likely in defense of yourself as well. This guy even steals her purse now, her purse. But by the way, note at this point, he actually puts his gun away. At this point, if the clerk had a gun behind the counter, could she draw that gun and shoot him? That's another calling the shots moment. And by the way, if the clerk kept her gun in her purse, as some people do, when she gave that guy her purse, she also gave that guy her gun, right? So think very carefully about how you carry. Not all modes of carry are equally consistent with being able to secure your personal safety. As is extraordinarily common, this armed thief robbing a convenience store also steals a bunch of cigarettes. Now he walks out. And at this point, the video just loops. I will note that the original video continues going on a few more seconds. As that guy walks out, another customer walks in, a woman walks in, and this clerk can't even verbalize that she's just been robbed. I mean, she's completely broken from the shock of having been the victim of an armed robbery. Now, in both those calling the shot scenarios, clearly this guy is the unlawful aggressor, is committing armed robbery. That's the element of innocence. He's not presenting some future threat, and he's not running away from the scene. He's presenting an imminent threat right now, which is the element of imminence. In terms of proportionality, this is a deadly force threat scenario, so deadly defensive force would be justified. In terms of avoidance, even if this was a state where you had a legal duty to retreat, she's got nowhere to run to, and she's not going to run faster than a bullet. And even when safe retreat's otherwise required, it's only ever required if you can do it with complete safety, which is not the case here. And she's not misperceiving events. He's not pointing a banana at her. He's clearly got a gun, or what reasonably appears to be a gun. So that's the element of reasonableness. She's reasonably perceiving what's going on. Certainly, she would be entitled to use deadly force in her own defense, but anyone else in that store would also be entitled to use deadly defensive force on her behalf. That's how defense of others law works. You're allowed to use force on another person's behalf to the same extent they would be entitled to use force in their own defense. So if self-defense by her would be justified, your use of force on her behalf would, by extension, also be justified.
Now, is that all 50 states, Andrew?
All 50 states. The only place where it gets sketchy is if there's a problem in perception where you think, for example, there's a robbery going on, but it's not actually a robbery. You're misperceiving what's happening for some reason. And then you use force thinking that other person would have been entitled to, but in fact, they would not have. Or imagine you stumble across a fight and you think you're coming to the defense of the innocent party, but it turns out they were actually the person who started the fight. So they can't claim self-defense themselves. If they can't claim self-defense, well, then you can't claim self-defense on their behalf, would be the argument a prosecutor would make. But here, there's no ambiguity of that kind. These aren't two guys having a fight. You don't know who started it. Clearly, this is an armed robbery. There's only one innocent party here and one unlawful aggressor.
Absolutely right. I hope you called the right shot there. We're going to do that again. We've got more videos to show you, and you're going to call the shots. Is this a good shoot, bad shoot? What's the scenario? Do you know where you're protected by the law when you're protecting yourself and your family? And that's what you need to know. Don't guess, don't assume, find out. And that's easily done in the book, The Law of Self-Defense by Andrew Branca. Thank you for being here, Andrew. Let's go right into this next video.
Before we go on, I see some comments here I'd like to address. So people are asking, can you simply shoot that guy in the back? If you were a customer in a store armed with your own gun lawfully, and you saw this going on, could you simply draw your gun and shoot him? Do you not have to give him a warning? Do you not have to verbalize anything like drop the gun? The answer is no, you don't have to do any of that. You're allowed to use immediate deadly force to stop his imminent deadly force threat against that woman. You're not required to give a warning. If he presents an imminent deadly force threat, and not only is he obviously presenting an imminent deadly force threat, he's making it explicit, right? All this counting down, all this 1, 2, 3, when I get to 5, I'm going to shoot you. 5's my lucky number. It doesn't get any more imminent than that, folks. You're allowed to take the guy at his word. So certainly, for example, if a cop just came into the door in the convenience store and saw this scenario going down, he'd simply draw his gun and shoot that guy. You'd be entitled to do the same thing because all the conditions for the use of deadly defensive force have been met. And that's true in all 50 states, folks.
There you go. All right, let's keep going. We've got more videos. We want you to tell us, is it a good shot or a bad shot? Let's go. What do we got here?
All right, this is a car backing into a garage, and he's about to be the victim of an assault by what appears to me to be a clown car full of people. There goes one car. Here's the clown car. 5 people jump out of this car and run under the closing garage door into the garage. And bam, the car comes runs over that one guy, front and rear wheels. Of course, the guy hops up and walks away. So I guess they don't make cars like they did when I was a kid. But in any case, the car is clearly here. The black car on the right is being used as what? It's being used as a weapon, right? It's being used to exert force on these attackers. And this raises an issue that comes up from time to time because normally, especially those of us who concealed carry, we tend to conflate our privilege to use deadly force and self-defense against a deadly force attack with the gun, for example, that we carry, or if we carry a knife as some kind of backup, maybe a knife. But the truth is, once you're in the realm of deadly force, once deadly force would be justified, and of course it would here, we check off all those 5 elements. And by the way, folks, if you didn't see, we have a infographic that I'll share with you in a moment on those 5 elements. But once deadly force is authorized under the law does not particularly care what manner of deadly force you use. If deadly force is authorized, you could be using a gun, you could be using a knife, you could, as here, be using a car, you could be using a piano dropped from a great height. It doesn't really matter. If deadly force is authorized, you're entitled to use deadly force to defend yourself. And the law doesn't particularly care about the nature of the deadly force involved. Here, the person being attacked had at their disposal something a lot more powerful than a handgun, a complete automobile. And they used that automobile as a weapon to defend themselves against attack, and it would be perfectly appropriate and lawful to do so. I hope this guy paid for all the rental car insurance, by the way, the bad guy. That is totally messed up. Now, one thing you wouldn't want to do is once you've gotten away and you're rolling down the street, is start chasing down bad guys to run them over because they created a bad day for you. Like with any use of force, you're only entitled, privileged to use that defensive force to stop or neutralize the imminent threat. Now, none of these guys appear to be armed, right? They don't appear to have any guns or knives or clubs or anything like that. When they're a group of 5, that hardly matters, because when you have that kind of disparity of numbers, that creates a deadly force threat all by itself. A deadly force threat meaning a threat reasonably capable of causing death or serious bodily injury. If you're being attacked by 5 people, they don't need a weapon to cause you serious bodily injury. But once the group's broken up, if you're driving down the street and you see one of them running down the sidewalk by himself, unarmed, they're no longer in that collective group. There's no longer that disparity in numbers. It would be very difficult to articulate that individual is still a threat against whom you could use your car as a weapon.
Yep, there you go. See, I have a feeling you guys are getting really good at this, calling the shots thing. You know, we do this every week, so make sure you tune in every single week. We're talking about the laws of self-defense. When are you protected by the law to use self-defense? Because you don't want to put yourself in prison for the rest of your life. And it's good to know, right? That's why you carry a firearm, to protect yourself. We'll know the laws so you can be protected as well. Thank you, Andrew, for being here. We have more videos, and I feel like we should just keep them going. We're sitting at 500 people.
Another reminder, can we remind people once again to share the video for all the people?
Share the video. You get a free book. The free book is an autographed hardcover from the attorney who wrote this book, Andrew Branca. It's a law of self-defense book. Share the video, and it could be yours.
And I do sign them myself, folks. Sometimes I get quite a bit of writer's cramp from signing all those books. And if you came in a little bit late, we talked earlier in the show about this brand new infographic that we have explaining the 5 elements of a claim of self-defense. If you don't understand these 5 elements, folks, you have no idea what self-defense law is, and I don't care who taught you. Because if it's not structured among these 5 elements, which apply in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Guam, the Virgin Islands, I don't care where in the U.S. you are, every jurisdiction's self-defense law is based on these same 5 elements. And if you don't understand what they are, you just can't get the value out of these discussions that you ought to be getting. And you can get that infographic for free at lawselfdefense.com/CTS. You should have a copy in front of you every time you watch one of these shows.
Yep, there you go. It's great that you're doing that. That's so awesome. I think that's the simplest way to know when it's a good shot, when it's a bad shot, right there. And once you know that, you can put it into your everyday life. Well, I know we've got more videos, and I know you guys are waiting to see them. So guess what? Here they come right now.
Okay, this is an older video. This is a convenience store. The guy's chatting up the pretty girl behind the counter. He notices something on the other side of the glass door, the entrance door. It's the bad guy wearing a mask with a gun. Now, guess what? This guy's got a gun too. So now it's gun versus gun. This guy's got the advantage here, gets the bad guy on the ground, and he's holding him now at gunpoint. Now, this is an old film. This is now someone else is coming in the store. What he's worried about now is that the armed robber has a compatriot outside, a backup outside. You always have to be concerned about that, folks. If you find yourself engaged in this kind of confrontation, I'm sure most of us are familiar. Not that long ago, within the past year, there was a shooting in a Walmart. A couple robbers came in. Well, it looked like one robber. Concealed carrier took that guy at gunpoint, and there was a second robber who then shot and killed the concealed carrier. The concealed in the back. The concealed carrier never had any idea that the second robber was there. So this is always a concern we have to have. You have to maintain awareness of your environment, not only the specific threat you may feel you have momentarily under control. Now, another interesting aspect about this is as the video loops, as we come back around, and this is a pretty short video, you'll notice that the guy at the counter reaches for his gun on his belt. You can see his elbow come up as he reaches for his gun, even before the bad guy steps through the door. Now, of course, it's a glass door. What likely happened was he turned his head and he saw just on the other side of the glass door the mask. And he said, uh-oh, this looks bad. And he reached for his gun immediately. See, even as the bad guy's coming in, he's reaching for his gun. Folks, I have to ask all of you, how many of you do this? Because most people, in my experience, don't. When you're walking into an establishment, and most commercial businesses these days have these big glass doors, right? Convenience stores, you go to Target, you go to Walmart. How often do you not look into the store until you're actually in the store, as opposed to, as you're approaching the door, actually look through the glass, which is visible, transparent for a reason, to see what that environment is like before you walk into it. So you don't walk into a robbery, for example. There's no reason not to be doing that. But in my experience, most people treat those glass windows and those glass doors as if they were impermeable to light, as if you couldn't see through them. You need to be aware of what's on the other side of that environment before you step into that environment to the greatest extent you possibly can. Now, here we end up with almost a movie-like gun versus gun situation, right? Where these both guys are pointing guns at each other. Frankly, the tactically sound solution to that problem is to be the first guy to pull the trigger. Obviously, if you're the law-abiding citizen and an armed robber in a mask comes in and you find yourself pointing your gun at his gun, the answer is probably to use that deadly defensive force to defend yourself against what's clearly an imminent, otherwise unavoidable deadly force threat from the armed robber. In this case, he didn't shoot. So he got, one might argue, lucky. Maybe the bad guy's gun didn't work, although, of course, you're not required to assume that's the case. You're allowed to assume that it's a real, actual, functioning gun if it reasonably appears to be a real, actual, functioning gun. And of course, now that he's got the guy on the ground and presumably unarmed, that would not be an appropriate time to shoot him. The window of the imminent threat, that window of imminence has been closed. There was a window of time in which there was an imminent threat right there. And then that time has passed and the bad guy's no longer an imminent deadly force threat. And if you shoot him then, that use of force is not justified because you're missing that element of imminence.
So many great points that you make. I love the fact that you talked about the Walmart incident where, you think that there's just one shooter and you think you've eliminated the threat, and little did you know that's not the case. Always have great situational awareness all the time. Getting out of your vehicle, walking up to the glass. Once you leave the Target or convenience store, walking to your vehicle, all the time. It's all the time. And I would say I probably I'm not awesome about doing it all the time because you just get, to that point where you're just, I don't know, take it for granted that you've been here 1,000 times to my in-laws or whatever, and I don't need to really check. But when I go to a convenience store or a gas station, just because I feel like they're probably the most, I don't know what the statistic is, but they're probably got a pretty high percentage of getting robbed versus other stores. You can guarantee, when I'm pumping gas, you can guarantee I know what's going on all the time around me because I've seen way too many videos and heard way too many stories of robberies, guns being pulled, just bad stuff happening in a little convenience store. So yeah, you might want to start doing that if you don't already. So many great points though that you make, Andrew. So I'm trying to go ahead.
That are coming in. Somebody asked of one is if the bad guy, even if he's on the ground, if he still has his gun, is he still a imminent deadly force threat? If he still has his gun, the answer is yes, because it takes a fraction of a second to turn a gun around and fire a shot. That's an imminent threat, folks, by anyone's definition, a fraction of a second between him making the decision and you having a bullet in you. Where it gets more complicated is when he no longer has the gun that you saw. He's dropped that gun, for example, and you have him on the ground out of arm's reach of that particular gun. Can you then just assume that he has a second gun because he had a first gun? Can you say, hey, here's a guy that came in to commit an armed robbery. For all I know, he's got a second gun, and that would still make him an imminent deadly force threat? The answer is no. You cannot just speculate or assume that someone's a deadly force threat. There has to be evidence from which you can make a reasonable inference that they're still a deadly force threat. If you have a actual reason to believe that he's got a second gun, maybe when he came through the door, he had the gun in his hand and another one tucked in his belt that you saw. So you know he's got a second gun. That's one thing. Then you would know he's still armed. Or if you got him on the ground and you don't know where his gun went, right? You don't see it on the floor outside of arm's reach. For all you know, he could be laying on it. You know there was a gun before. Where the heck did it go? That would be evidence from which you can make a reasonable inference that he's still armed. But if you've gotten the gun you know about away and you don't have any actual reason to know he's got a second gun, you can't simply speculate that he's got one and treat him as if he did have one. Speculation and imaginary threats, absent evidence, are not a basis for the use of force against another person.
Question here, Andrew. Same situation. Let's just take this video, for example. You're inside, you're checking out, and you see a guy coming through. You look through the glass and you see he's got a gun, he's got a mask on. He's going to enter the door. Can you already draw your firearm so that when he actually steps through the door waving his gun, you can shoot him right then?
Yes. So the risk you run into whenever you go to draw your gun is that the other person will perceive you reaching for your gun. And the moment you put another person in imminent fear of deadly force harm, which is what you're doing when you're reaching for your own gun in self-defense, you're going to justify that as lawful self-defense. But nevertheless, you're putting that other guy in fear of harm from your gun. That's the whole purpose. That's the basis for a charge of aggravated assault, putting another person in imminent fear of deadly harm that you now have to justify as self-defense. And maybe that justification will be successful, but if they put you to the test, you're looking at a very expensive legal bill to make that argument. So you're always better off if you can access your gun in such a way that the other person doesn't know that you're reaching for it. If they're not aware, then you haven't put them in fear. If you haven't put them in fear, you haven't even arguably committed an aggravated assault. What this guy did was very smart. He saw the mask and he both reached for his gun and he stepped a little bit behind that rack of stuff. So it's not much in terms of cover. It's a little bit of concealment, but importantly, it prevents the other person from visually seeing what he's doing. Now, what would have happened if that guy had come in with a bandana over his face because it was cold and he walked in, dropped the bandana, had no gun, was a totally innocent person? You wouldn't want to be pointing a gun at that guy because that could end up in a criminal charge. But if you're behind cover, you put your hand on your gun and no one knows that you did that, and it turns out to be someone innocent, well, you just take your hand off the gun. And there's no even potential legal liability there. So that was a very smart thing for him to do. Now, if you put your hand on the gun and the guy comes in wearing a mask and it's clearly an armed robbery because he's starting to bring his gun up, yeah, you can shoot him there. As soon as the imminent threat is apparent, then you can use deadly force in self-defense and you could fire that shot instantly.
So if he already has his gun out and he's outside the building and you see him enter, you've seen the gun clearly while he's outside and he enters now, he has his gun in his hand, it's time.
Yeah, so it would look to all reasonable appearances like that's an armed robbery. Now, is it possible this guy's performing a prank to get into a fraternity? That's possible, but
yeah, not a good idea though, because honestly, that's not a funny prank because something's going to go down. You just assume that it's an actual firearm and then that guy's in a bad situation. Did we lose you? No? Can you hear me? I think he can't hear me. I can hear you and I can see you, Andrew. What? I believe he can't hear me. Are you there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? He's telling me that he can't. Darn it. I'm just going to let him know.
Oh, I'm still live.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, sorry about that. I've completely lost the video on my end. So I'm just watching the time delay at this point on Facebook. But and I can't hear Nate, unfortunately. Let me see if
You
I can
can't
fix
hear
that
me?
problem at least.
I don't know what happened, but everything's good on our end.
Yeah. Well,
You can't see the video?
okay. Unfortunately, I cannot hear or see anything over the
I feel like moving forward, we should do this show for 30 minutes because it seems like at the 30-minute mark, something happens. So we have a lot more videos for you next week. So make sure
Well,
you tune
I
in.
believe you guys can hear me, but unfortunately, I can't. No.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to save this next video for next week. So make sure you tune in
Hey, folks,
next
this is
week.
the meta of the show.
Thank you, Andrew, for being here. And make sure you go on over to lawofselfdefense.com/CTS. You're going to get the 5 elements of self-defense. Those are the things you need to know. You can download that. You can print it off. You can keep that with you next week when you're here. You can keep that right there, and then you can call the shots to make sure that all of those are there and present and that you are now legal to use your firearm and you're protected by the law. So make sure you get that. Again, also, if you share this video, you're going to get an autographed copy of the book, The Law of Self-Defense. So make sure you share this video. We want to send that out to you as well. And then tune in tomorrow. It's our raffle. Make sure you get signed up at aliengearholsters.com/contest. We're going to be hooking you up with something from Law of Self-Defense as well, with a bunch of other cool stuff. And while you're there, sign up for America's Veterans Month. Yes, it's Alien Gear Holsters America's Veterans Month. We're giving away an AR-15 and a bunch of other cool stuff to go along with it. We don't have the graphic, but you know it. You saw it yesterday. By the way, we might have a guest appearance tomorrow. Might. That's the key word. But we got a lot of cool stuff coming up for you. So thank you, Andrew. I know you can't hear me, but thank you for being here. If I can speak on behalf of Andrew, you carry a gun, so you're hard to kill. Know the law, so you're hard to convict. That's it this week on Calling the Shots. Thank you for sharing this video. We will see you again next week. From all of us here at Alien Gear, carry safe, carry in comfort, carry on.